What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined always by my main man, Steven Thompson. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talk or subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they're making headlines for a potential wide receiver trade that has pretty much blown up all of social media, every news cycle, every fan base. Everyone is talking about whether or not the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to make a trade with Diontae Johnson, send him elsewhere, and man, there's a lot to talk about. It's been a beautiful week here in the Berg. It's been an interesting week here in the Berg. How you feeling, my friend?
I'm feeling good. I'm finding, every, stray ray of light that's shining into my house through the windows,
Yes.
and I'm like a cat. I'm just, kind of scrunching up and all those.
It's beautiful.
No, but yeah, it's it's hard to appreciate the weather though. When all we have to do is talk about Diontae Johnson trades. That is, I have to monitor his Twitter account now. Just keep those notifications on. See whenever he's gonna.
I did turn his notifications on yesterday, 2 days ago, and at this point, I kind of feel bad for him. For everybody who is not up to date with what's going on, there are reports, rumors, whatever you want to call it, going on about how the Pittsburgh Steelers are open to trading Diontae Johnson. Now, the original report said that you cannot classify Diontae Johnson as on the trade block, but that the Pittsburgh Steelers would be open to a trade if the right compensation arose. Is that the right word I'm looking for there?
I think arises, maybe.
Arises. Thank you very much. And then there are more reports, more rumors, more speculation about how maybe Diontae Johnson doesn't even want to be in Pittsburgh anymore, that maybe he wants to go, and then the Steelers are kind of forced to move on. If you watch his social media, his Twitter account, he's just tweeting out, everybody's delusional. This is crazy. Kind of sounds like he wants to stay in Pittsburgh. You heard the news. You heard everything going on. We've talked about this before. We're going to talk about it again. Do you think it's more smoke than anything? I think the bigger picture here is, do you think Diontae Johnson wants out of Pittsburgh? And do you think the Steelers genuinely want to trade this guy as they enter the final year of his contract?
I don't think he wants out of Pittsburgh. That is just not the impression I've gotten. I think Diontae... I think Diontae believes in this team. I think he believes that they can do something here, and I think this is the place where he's really built his career, and so it feels comfortable. I don't really suspect that he wants out of Pittsburgh. I don't really know if I buy that. I think Diontae has a reputation, and sometimes that I don't know. I don't want to say it's a reputation for a reason, but there are, you can understand why people think certain things about him, but I don't think many of those things are really true. Like, I don't think he fits into the kind of the diva mold that I think people want to throw him into. Like you said, feel bad that he's got to, kind of watch this all from the sidelines. Like, I'm sure as these rumors come out, it's not directly, Mike Tomlin or Omar Khan talking to people saying, hey, yeah, we want to trade this guy. I'm sure it's a lot of speculation. I'm sure it's a lot of, oh, this could happen. But that doesn't really change the fact that if you're someone sitting there saying, oh, well, I might get shipped out at a moment's notice and I might find out on Twitter or social media or something like that. Like, that sucks. But no, I don't think he wants out. I think the Steelers are open to it. I think you listen to what Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan and Art Rooney have said all offseason, and they're not, I wouldn't call it a desperate position, but it is it's a pivotal offseason. I mean, it is for everybody, everyone in that organization, and this team has really done some soul searching, I think, and that has led them to the notion that, we've got to explore all options. We can't close the door on anything. If something has the potential to make us better, we owe it to ourselves and we owe it to the organization to consider that. So I don't think it's any more complicated than that. I don't think it's an indictment of how Diontae's played or his attitude or what he is in the locker room. It's just the Steelers are in a pretty unique spot. They're in the middle of a pivotal offseason, so they've got to do a bunch of soul searching and figure out how they can truly make this team better.
That part I agree with. I think that when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers, they would accept a trade if the right trade came through, just because they can't sit around and, they can't sit on their thumbs and say, okay, well, look at here. This is what it is. this is our team. We're going to rock with this team no matter what. If an offer comes through that makes this team better, they're going to jump on that offer. I agree with that. But at the same time, they're not just going to trade Diontae Johnson. Like anybody sitting around saying, oh, go get a 5th round pick for him. No. Like you're not trading Diontae Johnson you're not just trading Diontae Johnson just to trade Diontae Johnson. That makes absolutely zero sense. And it makes zero sense even to get a 5th round pick, because people will say, oh, well, you just get what you can out of them. Not when you're trying to win. If this team was a year ago and they were looking at it and saying, well, we don't have a quarterback. We probably don't have an offensive coordinator. Our offensive line is still shaky. We got all these question marks. Diontae Johnson could just go because then we could just stack draft picks. That makes some sense. This year, the way the Pittsburgh Steelers have gone about their offseason, you have to look at it and say the Steelers are only going to trade Diontae Johnson if the perfect offer comes their way. When it comes to Diontae Johnson, I agree 100%. We have talked about this time and time again. This dude does not fit into the diva category. He's had some mistakes. Everybody has mistakes in the NFL. That happens all the time. Diontae gets caught doing some dumb things sometimes on the field, and for some reason, he has built a reputation, and it happens. Like there are players every single year where this fan base just latches on, and that is now the player that they do not like. And Diontae Johnson was one of those players, and he can never remove himself from being that player. As long as he is in Pittsburgh, he will forever be that player. So people want him gone. I don't think Diontae wants out of here. I mean, I don't blame him if he does. I look at it and say, if you're going to trade me to a team with a quarterback, sounds good to me. If you're going to trade me to a team that throws the ball properly, sounds good to me. I wouldn't even blame him there, but I don't think he's sitting around voicing to anybody that he doesn't want to be here or starting some drama or any of that. Now, when it comes to the trade compensation, you look at it, that people have tossed out a 5th round pick. 3rd round is like the magic number. Everybody keeps saying, oh, I think you could get a 3rd rounder for him. I think you could get a 3rd rounder for him. You look at a Diontae Johnson trade, what does it come down to in your mind? What do you think the magic number is, not only to be offered to the Steelers, but for the Steelers to actually say, yes, we will consider that?
Yeah, I think if you're the Steelers, you lead with, I want a day 2 pick. I think you could go as high as the 2nd, quite honestly. Diontae Johnson's good. I mean, I don't like, that's the thing. Like he had one of the more productive seasons of his career, probably the 2nd most productive season of his career, if I remember correctly. Last season, I know the no touchdown things, I think, sticks in people's heads, but this is a good player. So a day 2 pick, I think, would be where I'd start. If you're going any lower than that, I think if you're drifting into the 4th round or later, then I got to get 2 picks for him. That even, I feel uncomfortable even with that. Like my mind went first to, okay, give me a 3rd rounder and a 5th or a 6th rounder next year. That was kind of where my mind started. But I mean, if you're the Steelers and you're looking to get rid of them, then I think you do go down a little bit. But if you're looking for the best package, I feel like you start and end with, or you start with a 2nd round pick and you see where you can go from there, because I just think Diontae Johnson is worth that, quite honestly.
I agree. I don't know. You're interesting with the second pick. Like if it's a 4th round and then you toss another pick in there, maybe you could have a conversation. I think I'm with you though. I think 3rd round seems to be that sweet spot. I think you could get a 2nd. And I think that you could get, like, I'm going to toss it out there and people are going to say that I'm crazy, but just depending on how the board falls, like, I think that you could potentially convince the Kansas City Chiefs to make a move. And you might have to give up something more than Diontae Johnson. But if the end of the 1st round comes around, and I'm pretty positive the Chiefs still have their pick. I'm not 100% on that one, but I'm pretty sure that they still have their pick. If the Chiefs are rolling around at 32 and you're in talks and there are no real big splashy wide receivers left on the board, again, you might have to give up like one of those 4th round picks, but you could probably get the 32nd pick in the draft for them, and I'd feel pretty good. Again, it'd be a lot more difficult. You'd have to have those like serious talks. It's not just a straight yes for yes, but I think it could happen. 2nd round, I think, is easy. Like, I think, I've had people, Jim Wexell tossed it at me when I said that he could probably go for a 2nd round pick. He was like, well, what did they get for AB and Santonio Holmes? When Santonio Holmes left, he went for a 6th round pick, but at that point, there were just, everybody in the Pittsburgh Steelers organization was getting in trouble. The Steelers need to set an example. They would have traded Santonio Holmes for a bag of Pringles. They would have just been like, okay, sounds good. AB, third round pick, I get that, but even when that was happening, I don't know what the bidding was like. I don't know how many teams were like, we want a guy who didn't show up to the stadium in week 17, who's got some issues. Maybe a third rounder, I get that. I just don't think there's any chance you're going below a third round. And if you're not offering maybe 2 fourth rounders, I don't even think the Steelers consider it, because where do you go from there? Like, if you trade him for a 4th round pick, what are you doing? How are you replacing a guy like Diontae Johnson? Is it even possible? That's the question.
Well, I mean, it's possible, but it's costing you a lot more than, a 4th round pick or something like that.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. Like, if you're we're going to get into this in a minute, but like if you're looking at the draft board, if you're looking at free agency, it is going to cost you a pretty decent like chunk of change or a draft pick, or a pretty high value draft pick, in order for you to get someone who's equivalent to Diontae Johnson's value, I think, to his production. Like, it's just not that simple to replace a guy like that. Like, I think the past couple of years have really colored people's view of Diontae, and I don't think that's his full potential. I think this is a guy who still is reaching his prime. And that's the thing. The other thing about a trade is that you're not like you said at the top, you're not just trading him to trade him. Like, they're not looking to get rid of Diontae Johnson. It's when they say they're open to a trade, it's open to a trade where we get something at least equal or of greater value than what Diontae Johnson would be to us on the field. And that is a pretty high bar to clear.
I agree. And I think, when it comes to what the Steelers could get and what teams are going to offer, I don't think anybody's sitting around. Like, I genuinely don't think a team that would trade for Diontae Johnson, because it's not like the Carolina Panthers are not trading for Diontae Johnson. It's going to be a team that is looking for a top wide receiver, a team like the Chiefs, a team like, I don't know. I don't follow other teams enough to know what ones are real bad at wide receiver, but possibly the Patriots, depending on, how their draft goes. And they're like, okay, we can need somebody to pair with Drake May or Jaden Daniels or whoever. You look at teams that need a wide receiver who believe in their quarterback and who believe in their offense. They do not look at this and say, we're getting the Diontae Johnson that spent 2 years with Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett and 3 years with Matt Canada. That's not the same guy that they're going to get. You're going to put him into a competent offense and immediately he's going to take off. Like, it's just what's going to happen. And I think people are going to view it like that. I think Omar Khan is going to push that in trade negotiations and say, look, we fired the quarterback that was supposed to be his starter, got benched. The second guy that was supposed to be his starter got benched, and we fired his offensive coordinator. I think that this guy's got some potential, and teams will bite. And I think that you could raise the bar. I mean, look at Chase Claypool went for a 2nd round pick off of potential alone for a team that was looking for a wide receiver for their young quarterback. You can get this, and Chase Claypool, like, Diontae Johnson is head and shoulders above Chase Claypool and what Chase Claypool did in the NFL to that point, and has significantly less issues when it comes to being a problem in the locker room. Just that guy. It's easier than you think, I think.
Yeah, and I think there are, I don't know, like, to be honest, the Panthers are one of the first teams I thought of as could reach for, they're a team that's not paying out a bunch of big contracts. They have a young receiver, they're a young quarterback, that they might need to get up to speed. I feel like they're a team. The Patriots, I feel like the Cardinals too could just use.
Cardinals could definitely be, especially if they don't get Marvin Harrison Jr.
Right. I think the Jets also too. Like, that could be a team too who needs like another dynamic playmaker next to Garrett Wilson. Like, I feel like there are tons of teams that Diontae Johnson would fit onto almost seamlessly. Like, this is a guy who I think has experience and is a proven productive guy. I think especially if you're a team that is thinking about, okay, we could reach for a receiver in the 1st round, or we could get arguably more of a sure thing. I don't even think that's arguably. I think definitely more of a sure thing in Diontae Johnson than reaching for, Adonai Mitchell or Brian Thomas or someone in the at the very end of the 1st round, like you said with Kansas City too. That's an example that, like, the Bills are in the market for a wide receiver too. I don't know if they're necessarily an option there, but there are teams that need receivers and teams that might also not want to use a 1st round pick on it, like might not want to burn that draft capital on a receiver.
Yep, and I think depending on how the board falls, teams are going to be looking and they're going to be like, well, we needed a wideout. We didn't get one. Now we got to look elsewhere. And people will say, oh, well, it's a loaded draft class. The year that Marquise Brown and A.J. Brown and all these guys went for first-round picks was a loaded draft class at wide receiver. That doesn't determine anything. It's about how it falls. It's about how the draft board falls, and you just never know. Guys, we have gear, new merchandise, from AST to Mooth, Bleed Black and Gold, Kenny to George, and plenty of others now at our new website, blackandgoldapparel.com. And the coolest part, 50% of all profits at our store go to UPMC Children's Hospital here in Pittsburgh to make sure that we are giving back. We can't thank you guys enough, and we want to show you guys how thankful and how grateful we are for everything by making sure that we do our part to make the community here in Pittsburgh better. Go check out everything. We tried to make everything new and improved, from our designs to our quality of sweatshirts and t-shirts and everything else. Let us know and check everything out at blackandgoldapparel.com. And as always, thank you guys for everything. The next step for the Pittsburgh Steelers, you trade Diontae Johnson. Who do you replace him with? Because the Steelers are not going in there with Calvin Austin, George Pickens, and Allen Robinson and saying, there it is, boys, have a good time. I just don't think that that's on their mind. I don't think that they would even consider that. They'd want a replacement option, and they'd probably want it immediately. I think the draft has a lot of options that we'll dive into, and I think depending on when you draft them could determine some of that. But free agency comes first, and if the Steelers trade him before free agency, or even if they sign somebody to replace him and then trade him after that signing, could make some sense. What are some names that you got that could be potential replacement signings if they do get rid of Diontae Johnson?
Yeah, we've talked about Tyler Boyd before, but I won't go too in depth on him. But I think he's definitely an option. I like him a lot. Just a big body, a veteran with experience, and I think has the potential to, to really be a big player in the Steelers offense. But, some fresh names. I mean, Kendrick Bourne, formerly of the Patriots, according to Spotrac, only an estimated $4.8 million per year type of guy. I really like him. I think he was so underutilized in New England. I think he has big play potential, but he can play in the slot. He can play outside. He can do a couple of different things. So I like him. I also like Josh Reynolds from the Lions, a little bit pricier at $7 million a year, but still very affordable. I feel like for what he could do, not necessarily the same like big play threat, but I feel like you already have that with George Pickens and to a certain extent Calvin Austin if you think he can come along. But I think this gives you a kind of an intermediate threat, a possession receiver, a bit of a safety blanket for whoever's playing quarterback for you next fall. So I'd say Bourne and Reynolds. Like Boyd, obviously top of my list. That is my guy. But I think Kendrick Bourne and Reynolds are two members of a pretty deep free agent class that I think could be a big help.
Yeah, so Boyd, obviously, I think that one makes a lot of sense. You also, I mean, the Steelers, there are reports out today that the Steelers met with Allen Robinson's representatives in Indianapolis at the NFL Combine. They want to keep him. They want to just restructure or probably extend him. I don't know how that works. The fact that you already have another year makes that contract very interesting to me because it's not as simple as we're just going to extend you another season and spread that cap hit out. It's you're going to extend him and have to keep him for 3 years, and that's at that point very, very interesting. But void years are a thing. The salary cap is a myth in the NFL, so it could go a billion ways. If you sign Tyler Boyd, I think that one works a lot. I think you have two slot guys where things get interesting, which that's what the Allen Robinson thing doesn't make sense to me. Just go get Tyler Boyd. I also have Kendrick Bourne on my list. I think that one would be huge. I think he's cheap. Just like you said, I think his best season's like 600 and some yards in the NFL. Like he's never had, I guess it was 800, but the past two seasons, he's 434 and 406. Like the guy's never had a breakout year. And he's every season, I feel like you're hearing about, Kendrick Bourne's going to be the guy. Kendrick Bourne's got so much potential. I think he was in the same boat as a guy like Diontae Johnson. He has a bad quarterback, bad offensive system, nobody around him. He's just trying to make the most out of him. But he's a talented guy. He could play both inside and outside. I think that one makes a lot of sense. I also have Josh Reynolds. Dude was a touchdown machine this past season. He's coming from Detroit where, he's got a connection to Pittsburgh with Antoine Randall. I think the Steelers would love a guy like that. He's physical. He's kind of an underdog. I think they love that story. I think it would match up really well, especially to allow a guy like George Pickens to just be like a true-blooded number one. Like, hey, there is a significant gap between you and number two and the expectations between you and number two. So just go be a dog and let Josh Reynolds just be a number two. And I think that Josh Reynolds would love to be a number two. I think he would come in here with open arms, and I think it makes a lot of sense. My third option is Curtis Samuel, former Washington Commander, former Carolina Panther, speedster, plays the outside. I think he's been a little bit underutilized. I don't know. At this point, every time you hear about Curtis Samuel, it's kind of the same thing. It's this guy should be a breakout guy. He's a breakout candidate. Every year there's somebody in your fantasy football league who drafts this guy, and they're like, Curtis Samuel, man, it's going to be the year for Curtis Samuel. And then it doesn't turn out that way. But again, the same boat. He's in Carolina, no quarterback. He's in Washington, no quarterback. Maybe this is an opportunity to get a quarterback, potentially, I guess, and a better offensive system. Be a number two. He could fill that role. He's been filling that role in Washington. I think it works out. I think he's a speedster that maybe makes some sense for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he's definitely going to be cheap. At this point, he's definitely going to be cheap.
Yeah, I love cheap, and I love a flash of speed, to be quite honest. I feel like, I don't know, I guess, I don't know if I will actually say I feel like the Steelers offense did lack a little bit of explosiveness and a little bit of speed last season. And so I think just putting an athlete like that on the field, and I trust Arthur Smith to get the ball into his hands in a meaningful way a little bit more than I do Matt Canada. So yes. I think you looked at a guy like Calvin Austin and thought, okay, well, if they couldn't get an athlete like that involved, a guy with that kind of wheels involved, like, what makes you think they could do that for someone else? I think the offensive coordinator change really opens that up and gives me a little bit more confidence that that Samuel could work in this system. I think getting a guy who's that explosive is not a bad move at all, especially at the price. Like you said, he's not going to be expensive at all. Like, no, cheap. Like I think Kendrick Bourne is real cheap, and he's $4.8 million. Like if Curtis Samuel signs for $2 million, I would be shocked. That's
what I'm saying. They're both 27 years old. Like I think the big thing is if you're going to go get a Tyler Boyd, which I don't know if he's an exact replacement for Diontae Johnson, but I think he's the only one where you're like, okay, well, the productivity matches what Diontae Johnson is, so you're not really taking a step down. And then maybe Kendrick, maybe Josh Reynolds. Maybe Josh Reynolds kind of fits that mold too. I think everybody else, you're like looking at it and you're going, I hope this guy turns into something, but he's not a Diontae Johnson, and I think you have to accept that to where it is, but there are options. And if you're going to trade Diontae Johnson, you're looking long-term and you're not looking short-term. So these are short-term solutions to a long-term problem. And you're just kind of hoping at some point in the draft or in free agency over the next couple of years, you could land big, which moves us to the next point, the NFL draft. There will obviously be replacements there. The Pittsburgh Steelers met with everybody. We talked about possible trades up for Unduze, and they loved Troy Franklin, and they met with Brian Thomas. They guys that are just way out of their reach that maybe there's a reason that they're on their boards. Realistic options when it comes to the NFL draft if they trade Diontae Johnson. And you could even possibly toss their trade scenario in there and say, hey, look, they trade for here and then they pick this guy. You got a list for us?
I do. I have a couple names. I feel like Xavier Worthy, I feel like is one of those guys who kind of
4-2-1.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'll take that speed, and that's a guy who also I feel like has great ball skills. Can play the slot, can play outside too. That's kind of a dream. I feel like he's going to be gone way before it because he's a second rounder. Like all of these guys that I'm looking at are like second round or later. I don't think they're going to take one of those first round guys. But I think Worthy's even a guy that you might have to trade up in the second round for, and I don't know if they're going to do that. Roman Wilson, I feel like is.
Yes.
That's a guy we know that's a guy we know Mike Tomlin loves. Really productive on a national championship team. Solid hands. He's a good athlete. He's a little smaller, but I don't know if that concerns me as much. I feel like he plays bigger than his size. I feel like he plays beyond his measurements, and I just love his just innate receiver skills. I don't think he's going to blow you away with anything physical, but I feel like if you can't get Worthy, Roman Wilson is the guy, there are other guys, Jalen Polk out of Washington, but him and Ricky Pearsall and Devontae Walker, those are guys who I think are further down the kind of pecking order. Those guys are closer to third or fourth round picks than they are to second round picks, which makes me question a little bit if they are real Diontae Johnson replacements. Those guys are projects to a certain extent. And I feel like if you're getting rid of Diontae Johnson, you need someone who's going to slide in there and be productive at close to the same level right away. And I'm not sure if anyone outside of Worthy or Wilson is really very capable of doing that right now.
I agree. Well, Worthy's on my list. Wilson's on my list with a star. I think that's like he just makes too much sense for the Steelers. Mike Tomlin loved him at the Senior Bowl.
Yep.
He's a Michigan guy, so they're going to get at least one more look at him. At the end of the day, it'll be 3 looks total. It's a very interesting name. Roman Wilson's a guy that makes a lot of sense for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think he could be there in the second round, even without moving. But if you're trading Diontae Johnson for a second round pick, you could probably replace him with that second round pick. He makes a lot of sense for the Pittsburgh. Roman Wilson is probably the top of any list in the second, third round options, because just like you said, there's no, maybe they're going to look at it and say Dan Moore Jr. is totally fine this season and we'll draft a wide receiver in the first round, but I got a hard time believing that's going to be the case. I look at Roman Wilson and say that is a name, 100% a name. Troy Franklin, if he slides, depending on where he slides into the second round, it's going to be early second round if he does slide. And I think even possibly first round pick, I think he could go before the Pittsburgh Steelers. But if he doesn't, if there's a chance he's the back end of these wide receivers, that's a name to watch. Lad McConkey out of Georgia fascinates me. Definitely fascinates me. Feels like a Pittsburgh Steeler, physical dude. Didn't have, the most productive year, 2 years, 3 years in college. He was a touchdown machine 2 years ago with 700 yards, but this past season, just under 500 with 2 touchdowns.
He did get hurt, I think.
Yeah, he only played 9 games this past season. I look at him and say, this dude, he just reminds me of a Steeler. He's just a physical guy. He's 6 foot. That's good enough. He's got great hands. He's great at, he's got good catch points. I think it makes a lot of sense. His injury is going to hurt him. I think he's a second round pick. I think potentially he's a third round pick, but I think as, pro day and everything goes on, he'll climb up instead of back. That's a name. I would say, to me, he's up there with Roman Wilson.
Yeah. Yeah, I like Lad McConkey too. I feel like for some certain reasons, he goes underrated as far as what kind of athlete he is. He's got some speed. He's got some strength. This guy can compete at this level. You don't go to Georgia. You don't be the top receiver on national championship teams without being a good player. So, and being, able to play at that level. So Lad McConkey was not a guy that I was thinking about when I was putting together my list, but I really like that one, especially considering what you said about the way he might slide too, because that could be that's one of the few guys where I'm like, okay, I could see him as a third round or a fourth round pick, possibly being a starter, in week 1 or something like that.
Yes, 100%. He's a Puka Nacua. That's who, he kind of gives me that same vibes of he could come in here and make an immediate impact. I think there's a chance that he goes before the Steelers' second round pick by the time this is all done, because people are going to start realizing that guy's pretty good. Guy's not bad. There's a possibility, just to go a little off track here, where the Pittsburgh Steelers go Georgia tackle, Armarius Mims first round, Georgia wide receiver, Lad McConkey second round, Georgia center, Cedric Van Pran, third round, and essentially just start to formulate the Pittsburgh Bulldogs and move over to Philadelphia, because I'm Nick Sirianni, great. Mike Tomlin with some Georgia guys, I feel like is a little bit different. And it would not surprise me, especially with his daughter goes to Georgia now.
I didn't know that.
There. Yeah. She goes there from gymnastics. So she knows the athletes. He knows the athletes. Georgia's climbing up. It used to be Maryland. It used to be his son played at Maryland. Everybody, all the connection constantly there. Now it's Georgia. And Georgia's a much better connection to have. Yeah.
Caleb Williams is going to stay for another year, and he's going to be like, okay, honey, you got to transfer to USC now. I'm sorry. I don't make the rules.
You're going west. Unless she does transfer west, or, he somehow has a fourth kid, and in 18 years, that kid goes to USC. I think that's the only way that they go out west and start scouting out west. Before then, it's Georgia. It's all Georgia. All right. Potential replacements, I think they're all there. Free agent replacements, I think they're all there. Compensation, I think they're all there. I think we covered everything when it comes to Diontae Johnson and what could happen. And honestly, I'm not closing the door on it. I think it's definitely open. I don't know how open. And I don't think the Steelers are pushing right. Like, I don't think Omar Khan's sitting around making phone calls saying, hey, we're trying to get rid of Diontae Johnson. What can you give us? But I don't think that the door is shut. I don't think they're going to deny any phone calls. Are they going to trade anybody else? This is the next question.
I think they will end up trading someone else. I think there'll be someone who kind of surprises us. I have idea. It's interesting. I'm not like, there are guys that I think they could get really good value for. I mean, one guy in particular. I think everything else is going to kind of be on the margins. I think everything else is going to be less about, okay, well, we think we can get a great return for this guy. I think it's more about, oh, we can clear some cap space. We can get another draft pick if we get rid of this guy. That's why, I think Pat Pete falls under that category, especially
if you're looking at Pat Pete. That's
what I'm asking. I don't really know.
But
I'm also thinking it's more about the. I'm thinking it's more about the money and opening up a spot for a rookie corner. I think that's what it's more about.
I agree.
So, what can you get for Pat Pete? Do I really care? To be quite honest, I don't really think I do. I think it's more about the money to me. I mean, I don't think you're going to trade him for like a 6th rounder. I don't think that's necessarily worth it.
Might be a 5th. Might be the best you're getting. 32 years old, maybe 2 years left. But I mean, 5th round pick and you clear up $6 million in cap space. That's not a bad move. It's not a bad move. No, I agree. I agree.
Yeah, it's got to be the right price, but I think Pat Pete is definitely one of the first guys that I looked at because I was a little surprised that he didn't get just straight up cut.
Yeah, not yet. At least. We'll see what happens.
That's fair enough. Fair enough.
I got a name for you, Dan Moore Jr. If they draft another tackle, go ahead.
I thought about this one and I didn't. I had some concerns about it, but I'm interested to hear what you have to say.
So my thought is, if they draft another tackle, if they know for certain tackle's coming to Pittsburgh, it's happening. Dan Moore's got one more year on his rookie deal, so he's cheap. I think that would be fascinating to some teams. Spencer Anderson, they like Spencer Anderson. He could play tackle. He could play both sides of tackle. I think that makes a lot of sense for them. If that's the route that they're going, where he's going to be the swing tackle, and then you got rookie and Broderick Jones, and then they also re-signed Dylan Cook. So that's all the tackles. That's all the tackles that they're going to keep on the roster. I think it makes some sense. I don't know what you're getting for Dan Moore, but they turned Kevin Dotson into like a 4th round pick. I just feel like Omar Khan could stick around and say, hey, we'll get something for Dan. He's a starter. He's starter capable. He might not be very good, but he's got experience. And I think someone's going to need a tackle, and they could say, okay, here you go.
Yeah, among left tackles in the league, of 32 starting left tackles, he might be 25, 27. I don't really know. He's certainly not a top tier guy, but he's still a starting left tackle in the NFL. To that end, I think you could get a pretty good return for Dan Moore. Especially you bring up Kevin Dotson. You're telling me Dan Moore's not as good as Kevin Dotson. He's not as valuable as Kevin Dotson.
Kevin Dotson a year ago. You got to be more specific.
Yeah,
Kevin
exactly.
Dotson today is worth $16 million a year.
That's true.
Yeah.
Respect Kevin Dotson. I will respect Kevin Dotson.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think but like you said, Kevin Dotson last year, I think Dan Moore could get you at least a 4th rounder, if not better. So I like that one. I'm just putting my eggs in the rookie plus Dylan Cook basket.
Plus Spencer
Anderson. Yeah, Spencer Anderson. I've been told Spencer Anderson could play inside linebacker if the Steelers asked him to.
They'd probably put him there. I think it makes sense. But again, this is all just on a list of possibilities.
Yeah.
Just on a list.
That's the only thing that would concern me. I guess in a vacuum, the only thing that concerns me is depth. But if you think that if you're getting a stud in the 1st round of the NFL draft, if you're getting a tackle that could be with you for years and years and years, that doesn't worry me as much.
Yeah, I agree. Who else you got?
Well, I want to throw this one out there. I don't know if I would do it, but I think I could understand the logic behind it. Would you trade Naji Harris?
Oh, that's a big name.
It's a big name.
I think it would make sense to trade Naji Harris. I think if they want to draft a running back and they believe that Jaylen Warren is their guy and they could do a lot with Jaylen Warren, I think Naji Harris makes some sense. I think they like Naji, but I think that Naji's best trade value is right now. Do you what do you get for Najee? Like, what do you trade Najee? What is Najee's trade value worth? He's a 3-time 1,000-yard rusher. So
that's what I'm saying. Like, and I mean, I think he looked. I don't want to say he looked the best that he's looked in his career last year, but like I think there's an argument that his best season of his career was last year. You know,
yeah, I agree. Definitely better than the year before.
Right. And I mean, in his first year, I mean, he was like 3.5 yards per carry or something like that, closer to 3 yards per carry than he was to 4. Like, yeah, I could see it. I don't think I would do it because I think Najee's a win now type of player. Like, he's a guy you're not. He doesn't have the same value as a trade piece as he does, actually playing on the field for you. So I don't think I would do it, but I think you could get a high second round pick.
High second round pick. Really?
Dude, he's good. Yeah, this is
I'm just asking. I'm just. You think a high second round pick?
I do.
Naji Harris.
I do.
Ooh.
I do.
Oh, I don't. Oh,
You don't think so?
I think maybe a high third round pick.
Is it because he's a running back, or is it because?
Yeah, it's because he's running back. It's got nothing to do with how good he is. I think Naji Harris is good. I think teams would value Naji Harris. I think teams that had a better running game would value Naji Harris. I think like it all comes back to like everybody's got to understand that these guys were working with Matt Canada. Like, you don't get fired from the Pittsburgh Steelers in week 8 for no reason. That doesn't happen. Historically, doesn't happen. You set a new precedent of how bad of a coach you were as Matt Canada. You got to understand these guys can be better. And I think teams would acknowledge that. It's just that he's a running back. Like that would be, like at that point, just go, but he's cheap. That also makes a lot of sense. I think what plays into this is you have until May 2nd to pick up his 5th-year option, which is huge. So a team would have to be interested in picking that up, I think. 2, I think that Josh Jacobs and Saquon's got to go for a boatload of money. Way too much money. Like to the point where teams are like, wow, the running back market is actually good. This stinks. This is not what we want. At that point, I think you could get some trade value for Naji Harris. But I think if Josh Jacobs goes for like $8 million and Saquon's for like 9, Najee's got you got no chance trading a running back. Because at that point, you're just waiting for them to hit free agency, and then you could just sign cheap guys who are still good for 2 years over and over and over again and say, all right, that works out better. But I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm also not totally sold that they're going to pick up his 5th-year option. So I think maybe second-round pick might get me.
Well, I mean, yeah, I get what you're saying. I mean, I knew this was kind of a long shot from the start, but I think it's interesting because I think they like Jaylen Warren. I think they feel like they can fall back on him pretty well. And I feel like you said, people don't really value running backs. I think they think they're a dime a dozen.
Yes.
So I don't know. I thought it was interesting. I don't, like I said, I don't think I would do it, but I think it's a fun thought exercise. I'll put it that way.
I agree. Fun thought exercise. And if it happens, I think that's the biggest name outside of Diontae Johnson that the Pittsburgh Steelers could move 100%. I'm going to toss out one real close that I know both of us have on our list. Kind of a good way to go out here. Larry Ogunjobi. Big contract, hasn't played up to his contract. You're going to have to get some, I don't want to call them a sucker because I like Larry O. You're going to have to get some sucker that's like, we need a defensive tackle, and Larry O is our guy. And I don't think you're getting much for him. I don't at all, but I think you can get something.
Yeah. This feels a little bit like, Naji in the way that it's trading this guy would be of more value to, or actually, I guess it's kind of the opposite of Naji, where, Naji, I feel like trading him, you're giving someone else more value than you're getting back. But if you're giving up Larry O, like you're looking to really get the value, you're like looking to win that trade, like you're not, I don't know, I'm finding a hard way to articulate this, but it's like you're just, like you said, you're not getting a whole lot for Larry O, but you're not getting a whole lot from him right now. So
yes, that's exactly it.
Right. So you've got to find
some. Yeah, if you could replace him with ease and save some money and get a draft pick, it's better than cutting him, which is probably the other outlook. You think they cut him?
I don't see how you keep. I don't really understand how you keep him. To be quite honest,
I agree.
I feel like they have too many defensive linemen that they've got to, like, if you're keeping Cam, if you got Keanu Benton, if you're thinking of keeping around, I guess Marcus Golden is in the same position, but Amir, like Armand Watts, excuse me, like,
yep,
there are guys there that I feel like are not only cheaper but give you kind of equal production in a similar role. You like, because Keanu Benton is the future, to be quite, like, he is the Steelers have been extremely clear with that. Like, at this point, even if you're Lario on a big contract, even if you're playing well above the standard that you set last year, like, you're not playing over Keanu Benton. Like, you're not. Steelers aren't giving you that nod. I think that also hurts his trade value. It's just that he's clearly on the downswing, and the Steelers just want to get rid of him. I feel like they just want to kind of get rid of that contract. So, like you said, I like Lario. I think he could be productive for someone else, but I think it's going to be hard to convince another team of that.
Yeah, I think if you're calling, you're like, hey man, look, you could probably restructure him, and even if you're like, oh, we'll take on some of the cap hit, give us a 5th round pick, maybe. But just a name. I think Larry's like the bottom of the maybes, just because he's like a pet P. Like, chances are he's not going to be here, so you might as well just try to get rid of him and see what you could get. I don't know if it's going to work, but you never know. With that said, that's a lot of trade talk. I hope everybody enjoyed it. We'll see what happens. Diontae Johnson, again, doors open. The rest of these guys, possibly. We'll see how the offseason plays out. But exciting stuff. Turn those Twitter notifications on for Diontae Johnson, because it's about to be a wild ride for the next, 2 months, month and a half, until something probably gets done. We're heading out of here. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk, or find us anywhere you get your podcast. Check out all of our work at allsteelers.com and our pit coverage at InsideThePanthers.com. We will be back on Friday. Enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.